next presenter is Dr. Naomi Brookes with the University of Leeds in the UK. Professor Brookes holds a chair in complex project management in the School of Civil Engineering at the University of Leeds, where she is a member of both the Engineering Project Academy and the Institute for Resilient Infrastructure. She is also the action chair of an EU-funded initiative called Mega Project, which comprises a multidisciplinary group of over 80 researchers from 22 countries working together to examine the design and delivery of infrastructure mega projects. She previously held the position of director in the European Construction Institute and the Royal Academy of Engineering Chair of Complex Infrastructure Management, based at Loughborough University in the UK. She has a large number of publications in the areas of project management and construction management and mega projects. She is also the co-investigator on projects that received government funding to investigate different areas of engineering and project management across Europe, and worked on consultancy and research projects funded by companies such as Rolls-Royce and the Great Britain Museum Trust. Very interesting, so let's welcome Professor Naomi Brookes.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is an absolute pleasure to be here. I speak in two capacities. I speak as a professor of complex project management from the University of Leeds. The University of Leeds is one of the elite Russell Group universities in the UK, world-ranking institution. We're not quite as old as Oxford as Cambridge. We've only been in existence since 1831. So we are trying there. I'm also speaking in the capacity of the Mega Project Cost Action Chair. Mega Project is a project bringing together, as I was so kindly introduced, 80 researchers from across Europe, from 24 countries, to really investigate how we can more effectively design and deliver infrastructure mega projects. I have had a very interesting year taking the results of the findings of our project to everywhere as diverse as the Chinese Academy of Engineering and the OECD in Paris. And it's my privilege to be here today and share the results of that work with you. First of all, let me set the scene for my presentation today. My first trip to Dubai was in 2002, and I didn't come for business. I came as a tourist, and I was staying in the Jumeirah Beach Hotel and having a tremendous amount of fun in the Wild Wadi Water Park. Ladies and gentlemen, I return here to see those two things there, but phenomenal difference in the development that we see in the past 12 years. The incredible growth in both Dubai and the wider Emirates is testament to the vision that you have here. And an essential part of that vision is mega projects. Mega projects are the vocabulary of development. And I had any number to choose from, really, in creating this slide. But here you can see mega projects from the residential and property development area, from the metros, from rail, from airports, even nuclear plant development here in the UAE. Ladies and gentlemen, mega projects, as I'm sure that you have experienced here, are not without their issues. Globally, we see problems with mega projects in terms of financial restructuring in the face of uncertainty. We see problems and issues of contending with scope change and at the same time cost escalation. We see issues of marrying the tradition of sustainability and tradition in the face of modern development. So I'm sure that you would agree with me that effectively understanding how to design and deliver megaprojects does lie at the heart of future economic development. So what I want to do today is really address these 4 points. First of all, what are megaprojects and why do they matter? We do have a generalist audience here today, and I want to check that we are all in agreement about what we're talking about here and the product and the impact that they can have on society. How do they perform? Globally, how can we compare their performance? How can we do that in a statistical and rigorous way that goes beyond anecdote? And finally, how can we actually then take away learning about how we should consider megaproject development? So what is a megaproject? What we're talking about here are very large-scale investment infrastructure projects. We are looking at things that typically start at about $1 billion. We are not looking at one particular sector. We are looking cross-sectorally. And within that category, we'll see megaprojects that are transport megaprojects, bridges, road systems, airports, ports. We'll see energy megaprojects. We'll even see megaprojects within that category that are cultural events. What unites all of these, though, is their extreme complexity and their record of poor delivery. And in a conference which is concerned with project management, when we are considering mega project management, we are looking at extreme applications. So, for example, the International Project Management Association has actually recognized this now, and next year we'll be introducing a special interest group that looks at mega project management in its own respect. And mega projects are obviously costly, but are colossal in size, captivating in the way that they inspire our imagination, always controversial, always complex. And mega projects are the sort of projects that are so large that they actually change their environment. And why do they matter to us, ladies and gentlemen? Well, we have to spend 100 trillion euros at least by 2030, according to the World Bank, to renew our infrastructure. And we are going to do that in the most substantial way by the development of mega projects. It is very easy to spend $1 billion these days, ladies and gentlemen, isn't it? You cannot introduce a power plant without spending about $6 billion of any variety, including renewable. Furthermore, mega projects lie at the center of the energy equation. We produce energy through mega projects. That's the Itapu Dam that you can see there. And we expend energy through mega projects. Additionally, and in the face of the huge global economic challenges we've been facing, and hopefully we're just emerging from, mega projects provide infrastructure development. They are a promotion to economic activity. So it's very important for us that we actually introduce these effectively. How do we do at designing and delivering mega projects? The first figures I'm going to quote to you actually aren't from the mega project study. They're from a book produced by a gentleman called Ed Merrow, who some of you may know from an organization called Independent Project Analysis, And the book is entitled Industrial Megaprojects. And ladies and gentlemen, I recommend it to you. Ed found something very interesting. He found that megaprojects fell quite distinctly into two categories. Good megaprojects, which actually managed to underrun their budget by 2% and complete on time, and bad megaprojects, overran budgets by at least 40% and a schedule slippage of around 28%. This is the split between the two. If we believe those figures, ladies and gentlemen, 2/3 of the mega projects that we embark on are going to fail in delivery. Let's think in terms of effectiveness. This, again, is not quite yet mega project work. This is work by Canadian and Americans, Miller and Lassard, looking at how mega projects actually achieve their objectives. And I hope you can see there that, yet again, we're seeing about 40% of mega projects actually achieving their objectives, to a small but substantive proportion of those at the bottom there being complete white elephants, i.e. something that is of no use whatsoever. What happens when we actually break those figures down sectorally? How can we compare the performance of different sorts of megaprojects? And now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to share with you some figures from the megaproject cost action. Being a good professor, I should, of course, warn you about sample sizes and all of those kind of issues. But this are the figures that we've just produced for an enterprise we were doing for the UK government, giving a cross-sectoral comparison of megaprojects. The first thing, of course, to note is that they all are over cost and over time. By far the worst offender in terms of megaproject performance are nuclear power plant. Now, I do have to say that these figures are based on a largely European sample. So that if we were going to address this situation globally, that might change. Part of the joy I have in coming around the world and talking about this is hopefully providing the opportunity to find new collaborators with whom we can join to make these figures work on a wider basis. If we look perhaps and drill down into the detail a little here and look at the performance against forecast of some of the mega projects that we hold within our own data portfolio, the mega projects data portfolio. So there we got Flamanville, an LNG plant, an offshore wind farm, more nuclear power plants, conventional power plants, and finally another renewable, a solar power plant, Andasol in Spain. These are all overruns against the schedules, and you'll see that in some cases we have a question mark there because we have no real idea about the target that was set there or how actually those will be achieved. So again, we see a picture of cost overruns. We've also done some work on actual values to compare the amount of time it takes from the decision to award contract to the actual completion and entry into service of transport mega projects versus energy mega projects. And this is quite interesting because we actually find those 2 points in time, it's almost double the time for a transport mega project as it is for an energy mega project. We think this is something to do with probably the business model that you're pursuing here. With energy mega projects, it is far more imperative, obviously, that you get that on-stream cash flow into operation situation that Dr. Small was just talking about, than perhaps you see a parallel in transport. And we see that energy mega projects are actually willing to overspend immensely in order to hit their actually entry into service dates. But echoing Dr. Small's words again, though, it really is imperative that we do think about the whole life cycle of these. I have presented a very gloomy picture of delivery, but we must always remember that the true effect of our mega projects will only be felt after decades. So the picture that I've got up there is, I'm sure some of you will be familiar, the Hoover Dam. 1931 started, 1936 completed, $165 million then. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's only now that we really can assess the impact of that mega project and its impact on its environment. So while I'm being quite gloomy about the start of that delivery process, let's not forget that we will only our children will actually be the people who can really understand whether or not we made the right infrastructure development there. But let's go back to this delivery phase then, and let's look at why people think that mega projects fail. So these are existing ideas which I have culled and gathered together from the current best practice and thinking in this area. The first idea, actually, and this comes from an Oxford professor, Bent Flovberg, and two Nobel-winning economists, Daniel Kahneman was one of them, that part of our reason the reason why we're ineffective in actually delivering to a forecast is because we failed to forecast correctly in the first place. And the reason we failed to forecast correctly, he says very contentiously, is either because we are just too optimistic or because we strategically misrepresent. Another and a very profligate stream of reasons for megaproject failure are those associated with a lack of structured decision-making. So a failure to really have effective stage gates throughout the design and delivery of megaproject infrastructure to enable true control to be maintained. And ladies and gentlemen, if you are interested in this, I would refer you to two things. I would refer you to a trans-European study called NetLips, which has developed an IPAT tool for infrastructure introduction. And I'd also refer you to the Concept Research Centre that's been set up by the Norwegian government, which does some very interesting work in terms of effective decision-making tools here. Ed Merrow and Milan Lissard, I previously mentioned them, talk about the failure of megaprojects being due to a lack of ability to shape that project. Putting somebody in charge who cannot shape the business proposition that is required to underlie that project, and a lack of effective front-end loading. But ladies and gentlemen, there is a dearth of reliable, open-source, large data set material that actually tries to statistically and rigorously example megaproject performance, and it's that to which our megaproject research investigation is addressed. So what I actually want to look at now then is to tell you a little bit more about this investigation and their findings. So as I mentioned, we are a network of over 80 researchers, and we're actually now 24 European countries. We're joined by Argentina. I'm very pleased to say as well that hopefully we're just about to embark on a strategic partnership with Tongji University and the National University of Singapore to share their data sets to create a truly global review of megaproject performance. And I would be delighted if we could find a way to share some of the infrastructure projects that are taking place here within the United Arab Emirates as well. We're multidisciplinary. We come in all sorts of shapes and sizes: economists, construction management, civil engineers, even logistics specialists. And we're looking at what can be learned across our sectors. Our main objective then is actually to understand how to design and deliver mega projects more effectively, specifically in the European Union, because the European Union is funding us. So you've got to keep your customer happy. But I think the the guidance that we have come up with has a truly global resonance, from which we can tell from the number of invitations that we've had to actually talk about this. Secondary objectives very much then are around creating a portfolio of data and making our findings relate to that data. We are into evidence-based megaproject management. And here's part of our portfolio. Sorry, the pictures are very small. They're not all of the projects are there, but I hope you can see that we go from everything from offshore LNG through to all sorts of power plants, conventional, renewable, nuclear, high-speed rail, road projects. You can even probably just in the middle there see our most unusual megaproject category, which is ocean-going liners. That's where you can go and find it all. It is all open source. We'd be delighted for you to take our cases and download them and use them in whatever way you want to. So this data is freely available and open source. Now, I'm going to make no apologies that you can't read that slide. I've put this one in here so that you understand that I really am a proper professor and we really are doing proper statistics. So this is the big spreadsheet that we actually put all of our information into. On the top there, and we haven't got enough screen space to go along, we put all of our mega projects. Then we put an assessment of their performance against 3 basic, crude but effective criteria. Whether or not they achieved their forecast schedule of planning, whether or not they achieved their forecast schedule of delivery, and whether or not they achieved their budget, their forecast budget. So we take all our mega projects along the top, assess them in 3 crude but simple ways, and we have to do this, ladies and gentlemen. Comparing performance across sectors is very difficult. It's very difficult to find the precise constructional equivalent of first nuclear pole in another sector. So we do not want to break down into too much detail that we lose the power of our analysis. So we make that assessment. And then on the left-hand side there, you can see some of the 75 characteristics by which we characterize our mega project. And then we simply press a button. For those of you who are more familiar with statistics, the button we press is for a Fisher exact analysis to link those 2 parameters together and come up, therefore, with statistically significant explanations of why the mega project performed or did not perform in the way that it did. Most of the relationship we came up with are a very complicated statistical term called MUSH. So there are few statistical relationships that you can actually garner in this way, which means that we must give much more emphasis to those that we do find. And those that we found then, ladies and gentlemen, in no particular order, are the following. Crucial was the relationship between client and EPC. In terms of being close and understanding, but not that close. So one of the first things that we could do is relate relationships between client and EPC to the actual mega project performance. The second and very deleterious effect was the regulatory environment. So wherever we had a situation where you could clearly see an impact of regulatory environment upon the nature of that mega project, unsurprisingly, we could see problems in terms of delivery schedules and in terms of being to budget. Thirdly, and I don't know how this would translate beyond an EU context, was the whole idea of external stakeholder involvement. if your external stakeholders were on board, your mega project had a far greater chance of success than in those situations that it wasn't. And finally, a really interesting one, which I don't think any other study of which I'm familiar has actually picked up, and that's the whole idea of governance structures. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you're familiar that probably about 40% plus of mega projects these days are actually designed and delivered by some form of special purpose entity, special purpose venture, joint venture. And we found a clear relationship between the presence of these type of financial structures, which we obviously need. We have no choice but to adopt to share the risk and find the capital to do these projects, and delays in planning. So just to summarize then, these are the kind of issues that we found here then. So relationship between client and EPC. When we found that the client is both the EPC and the contractor, we had real problems in delays in construction schedule. Almost there was too close a relationship when you're both the same thing. There was a lack of an outside voice that was actually contributing to that. But where we found the client and the EPC had the same nationality, interestingly, a very cultural aspect, then we actually found that was beneficial in terms of actual project cost. When we look at the strength of the regulatory environment, a regulatory activity actually delaying the project or finding the project had an extreme inimical effect. And in a moment, I'll talk about how I think we might reduce this. External stakeholder involvement, pre-existing anti-project attitudes by external stakeholders at a governmental level immediately led to problems. No public protests, you meant that you had a much better chance of actually achieving your construction schedule. And the presence of an SPE in the project, the presence of a joint venture, which we know so very, very often there has to be, led to an association with delays in planning. So what do we think at this stage Mega Project tells us that we should take away and learn in terms of the cross-sectoral lessons that have been derived from this project? First of all, you need to pay close attention to the client-contractor interface. I don't think this is a surprise to anybody. I think everybody in this room will say that's obvious, and thank you, Naomi, for actually statistically proving it. Especially when that client or contractor is an SPE. So our focus, and it is strange for me as an engineer to say this, is relational. A second point is to concentrate on providing effective but non-bureaucratic regulatory environments. Too often I think clients are almost schizophrenic. If we're looking at a government client, we'll have one hand trying to introduce a important infrastructural mega project, and on the other hand, a separate part of that government which is introducing a regulatory system that makes that more difficult. So that clients really need to make sure that they have profound and useful and reliable but non-bureaucratic regulatory environments. And finally, there's a real need to work really hard at understanding the viewpoint of external stakeholders, because certainly in the context of the mega projects that we've reviewed, this has been an extremely powerful force in disrupting those projects. But above all, I guess my two parting statements are this then. And this again is a strange statement for an engineer. I think that those of us who embark on commissioning and delivering mega projects have to be humble. We have to know why it is that we are not going to be one of the statistically large failure group. And that's a very important message to carry on. And to understand the holistic environment of your mega project. Mega projects are huge. Mega projects change environments, but mega projects need to realize that environments can also change them. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much indeed.